Something that I noticed in the play was how Elliot pointed out that whenever Pop talked about being in the military, he always talked about all the funny and nice things that happened to him, like falling in love with Ginny, but never talked about the true dangers and trauma of war. I think as a result of Pop doing that, Elliot didn't fully know the toll that going to war has on a person and joined the military without knowing the full implications of what that would do to his future physical and mental health. I also noticed how the war experiences of Pop and Elliot were very similar, while those of Grandpops mainly highlighted how he played the flute for his group of soldiers. One of the priorities in this play is following military code. An example of this is when Elliot and Pop were injured and they kept reciting the military protocol they had to follow for injuries. Another example is how they keep using military time instead of normal time. Another priority in this play is reviewing old memories. One example is how Elliot really wants to know more about his Pop's experience in the war so he can lessen his own burden and guilt about the things he had done in Iraq, and so that he can know if the nightmares and guilt ever end. And another example is how Ginny keeps all the letters that Pop wrote to Grandpop so that they don't forget the details of what happened to Pop in the war or how they fell in love. Something I didn't know was where Incheon was, and after some research, I learned that at the Battle of Incheon, the U.S. troops launched an attack from the sea during the Korean War, and as a result of this battle, the U.S. was able to secure the city of Incheon, and were then able to recapture the South Korean capital of Seoul, which helped cut off the supplies of the Korean army. With this new knowledge, I learned more about the things that Grandpa would have done in the war other than just the stories he told about playing the flute for the other soldiers. The American soldier is not depicted as a superhuman or heroic person in this play as in the typical stereotype. The portrayal is strictly of their experiences and how it affects them as people. The audience is really able to learn about the traumatic events that the deployed soldiers face and are able to learn about the pain and guilt and sorrow that these soldiers carry around after being forced into situations that are killed or be killed, and after witnessing so many of their friends and fellow soldiers and innocent people becoming victims of a war that they didn't start. An example of this is how Elliot felt so guilty about killing the first man that he had ever killed, and how he still carried around his passport with him. A fugue is when multiple stories or songs being told or sung by different people are interwoven to form one overlapping story or song and have different developments and stages that come together and form a climax at the end. The concept of a fugue relates to the play, as in the play there is multiple storylines, all with the same theme and basic plot of a soldier at war, that come together to form the climactic event of Elliot learning about his father's experience at war and then returning to Iraq. The playwright intended this play to expose the experiences and trauma that soldiers face during the war and the scarring physical and mental effect it has on them. However, the playwright doesn't take a stance on war. One question I have is, why do you think Elliot went back to Iraq? Another question I have is, do you think Elliot will ever stop feeling guilty about the things he did in Iraq?